What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Fox Body Phantom channel. You know, heading into the winter, there's not a ton of videos I have to do for you with the car, so I thought I'd have some fun with you and share some lists over the next few weeks and months as we get through the winter and the cold season up here in the Northeast. And the first thing I want to do is, I was thinking about it the other day, I wanted to share with you what I think are the 10 most beautiful American cars ever made. So we're going to go through, talk about the 10 cars, we'll share a couple pictures with you, maybe share a little information on those cars, and really why I think they're the pinnacle of American car design. Now, I will tell you, I'm not a pre-war car guy, so World War II. There's a ton of beautiful cars from the really from 1900s all the way through the 1940s. I just don't know enough about them, and to me, they all look very similar. Sorry, Sean. I know if my friend Sean's looking at it, he's a pre-war guy who has a ton of beautiful cars. He's gonna be pissed at me. But the reality is I just don't know enough about them. So I'm going to share with you kind of post-war, say let's 1950s to the present, on what I think are the most beautiful cars ever made in America. And now these aren't the best cars ever made or the highest performance, but I just think aesthetically, every time I see one on the road, I'm like, that's just a gorgeous car. So happy to share it with you. All right, everybody. We have number 10 on our list, which is the 1955 through 1957 Ford Thunderbird. Again, I think one of the most beautiful cars ever made, truly iconic and incredibly important. What most people don't realize about the 55 through 57 Thunderbird is it's the car that saved Corvette, which sounds incredibly crazy. Like, this is a Ford that actually dominated the sales market. Absolutely. In 1955, when the Thunderbird launched, it was Ford's answer to what Chevy was doing. Most people don't realize Chevy built the Corvette in 53 as an answer to what the young guys and girls that were coming over from the war were looking for. They were driving these little small roadsters over in Europe, these MGs. They loved it. Soldiers were importing them in. The American car industry realized there was a huge opportunity to go after that market, so they started building these Corvettes in 53. But as beautiful as the 53 Corvette was, it was incredibly underpowered with the Blue Flame 6. Not a terrible motor, but again, the sports car was an underpowered V6 with a 2-speed power glide automatic. Not exactly a recipe for success. Ford came along, built the Thunderbird in 55, and now they gave you an option. In 55 you get the 292, so you had a V8 with V8 power, V8 torque. So you had this really cool option to have a sports car that was very different than what you were getting from Chevrolet. And here's how it saved Corvette. Chevy wasn't sure what to do with the Corvette, so in 1955 they sold like 700 Corvettes. Ford sold over 16,000 Thunderbirds that first year. And why wouldn't they, right? The car was an incredible value. You could get one for around $3,000. And through its life cycle, it would change a little bit between 55 and 57. But what was cool was, it wasn't a ton of change. It was mainly what you could do from the powertrain. So you could go from the 292. By 57, you could get a 312 with a much bigger 4-barrel carburetor, tons more horsepower, a lot better performance. And what an incredible car these were. Again, they saved the Corvette. They made this incredible, iconic car that Ford would then have on their lineup for the next 50 plus years. So I love the body style on this. And if you want to buy one today, you're looking at around $60,000. So talk about a car that had staying power, still beautiful. Every time I see them at a car show, I have to go and take a look. If you see them in some of those really cool pastel colors they had back then, it's just an absolutely gorgeous car, especially if it has the hard top with the porthole on it. Incredibly classy, incredibly beautiful car that was way more important than people realize, and again helped save one of the other most iconic cars. Number 9 is probably the most controversial car I have on this list, but I absolutely love it, and if I see one today, I'm still like, this is just a beautiful car. It is the Plymouth Prowler from 1997 through 02. When you look at that car, you're like, well, here's the deal. Everyone loved that car when it came out, but it was incredibly overpriced and incredibly underpowered, right? Had a 3.5 liter V6, the same motor you get in your Dodge Caravan or your Intrepid. It put out about 235 horsepower. But that wasn't the story, right? The car cost $44,000 new. I remember looking at one with my wife on the car lot when we were going to buy her Jeep in 2000. I'm sorry, no, her PT Cruiser in 2001. We bought her a brand new PT Cruiser, and we were both looking at the Prowler, and we were like, this is just such a beautiful car. It was in that purple color sitting on the showroom. And look, you can say whatever you want about Chrysler, but they know what they're doing when it comes to style and it comes to colors. They always have these unbelievable high-impact colors, these yellows, these oranges, these purples that just pop and call you to the car, and the Plymouth Prowler was absolutely that car. Here's the cool thing about the Prowler. They sold 11,000 of them from 97 to 02. And this is the least practical car of all time, right? It looks like an old hot rod. There's no storage space. It's a parts bin car, right? It looks like the interior out of any other Chrysler at the time. and it runs with a really anemic automatic transmission with 235 horsepower. And it was $44,000. You can go buy a Corvette for that money. But it didn't matter. They sold 11,000 of them. And if I see one at a Cars and Coffee or a car show today, I'm still hooked in automatically because I think it's such a cool car. I absolutely love them. So again, I said it's the most controversial, but it's not about performance with this list. It's about the best looking cars. And I challenge you, if you see one today, to tell me it still doesn't look great. And they're still selling, like I said, for that $30,000 to $35,000 range. So there's still a ton of people that love that car today. All right. You can see I have my Smokey and the Bandit shirt on today. I'm going to talk about the next most iconic car, and that's going to be, to me, the 77-78 Trans Am. This one was tough for me because I actually really like the body styles from all those Trans Ams. Not as much from 79 to like 81 or 82 when they changed the front end. But I think that, that early 70s through 78, those Trans Ams are just beautiful. But if I'm thinking about the one that I get the most excited to see, that I think is the prettiest one on the road, it's going to be that Bandit Trans Am from 77 and 78. You had two engine options. You had the 400, Pontiac motor or the 401 Oldsmobile motor. It depends on which transmission you had. If you got the manual transmission, you get the 400 from Pontiac with a little more horsepower and a little more torque. If you got the automatic, you got the Oldsmobile motor. And you can tell the difference on it because how it says on the hood scoop. One says 6.6 liters. And the other one just says 6.6, right? So there's a slight difference on the two cars, so you can tell what the difference is. But usually the easiest way is to see if it's an automatic or a manual. The reason I love this car is, again, I grew up in that generation of watching Smokey and the Bandit. And every time I see one, to me, it's just such a cool car. Specifically if it's in the black and gold livery, right? If it's black and gold, if it's the Bandit colors, that's the car I want to see. I think it's just so cool looking. The giant flaming chicken, the hood scoop. If it's right, you've got the T-tops, the louvers on the back, the honeycomb wheels. Everything just plays in so well together in the black and gold color scheme. It's just an absolutely gorgeous car. And these cars were like $5,000 new. And if you want to buy one today, you're looking at $35,000 to $45,000. I looked at one last year before I bought my Mustang. And it was a gorgeous low miles car at a really nice high-end classic car shop near me. And it was selling for $44,000. And I actually thought really hard about buying it. The hard part for me is, how do I justify spending $44,000 for a car with 190 horsepower? Man, I was so close. It was such a pretty car. I absolutely love it. So that's going to be number 8 on our list. We're heading over to number 7. Right, number 7 is going to be the 1959 and 1960 Cadillac Coupe de Ville. For you guys that don't know, I love Cadillacs. I have for a long time. I said at the beginning of this video, my buddy Sean. Sean is a Cadillac lover, and he had the greatest quote I've ever heard, and it still to this day pisses me off because it's so good and it was impossible. When I was getting ready to buy a car in the around 2016, I was looking between some Lincolns and some Cadillacs, and Sean said to me, he goes, "Bill, no one says it drives like a Lincoln." And I'm like, "You son of a bitch, you are 100% right, and you totally sold me on it." And I ended up buying a Cadillac XTS. Had it for a couple of years, loved the car. My wife loved it, so we bought her. She still drives this 2016 XTS, all-wheel drive, black, gray leather interior, beautiful car, rides incredibly comfortably. But when I think about Cadillacs, you got to go back to the older Cadillacs. And this is where I said, like, pre-war Cadillac has a ton of beautiful cars. Post-war, they do too. I love the 68 Eldorado. It came really close to making it on this list. I think that car is stunning. But I think the best-looking Cadillac to me is the 59 and 60 Coupe de Ville. Especially if you get, again, some of those pastel colors. I mean, it's just such a pretty car. And this car was a monster, 5,000 pounds, over $5,000 back then. Big 390 motor. What else can you say? When you think of Cadillac, that's the car I think of. It's just the fins, the style, the chrome, the interior. There's just everything about this car screams American excess in 1959, and I absolutely love the car for it. I think the car is absolutely gorgeous and phenomenal, and I love the fact that it talks about America when we're at our prime, post-World War II. Everyone just this huge level of success, and if you had this car, you made it. It's beautiful. If you want to buy one today, it's actually one of the most reasonable cars on the list we're looking at. You can still get one in that $40,000 range. So I would say scoop one up while you still can, because it's an absolutely beautiful car. Number 6. The 1968 and 1969 Chevelle SS. I know that most people love the 70 through 72 better. I love the body style in the 68 and 69. It kind of carries over a little bit of that front end from the 65 through 67. With the back end you get in the later Chevelles. But I love the grille, that slant in the front of the grille, the 4 headlights, the rounded back end. I just think this car is gorgeous. And this car was available with a bunch of different engine options. You could get one new for like $3 grand in 68 for the most basic version, with a 327. In 69 you could get a 427, the Coupe cars, or the Yankos, right? There were some unbelievable cars in here. And again, they weren't a ton of money for the time. They were, ubiquitous. They were everywhere. The Chevy sold, hundreds of thousands of these Chevelles during these years. And even in these years, they were selling 60 and 80,000 Chevelle SSs during these years. Huge production numbers for these cars, and they are gorgeous. I think these cars work best when you have the stripe around the front end versus the racing stripes. And to me, a 68 in white with that red stripe around the front end is gorgeous. Or, again, the one I've always wanted, the one I've looked for such a long time. I don't think it's the best looking version, but it's the one I loved as a kid, and it's the one I've always wanted, was a 69 blue with the white racing stripes. Is just absolutely a gorgeous car. Again, tons of different engine options in the car, from very mild to very wild, tons of horsepower. Now you get into the 70 through 72 and you start getting some of these monster engines in there, these LS6s with the big 454s and, almost 500 foot-pounds of torque. But to me, this was the best looking version of the car, and I think, again, one of the most iconic cars of that era. Now, if you want to buy one today, it's every bit of $40,000 for an SS, and, you can expect to spend 50 or 60 for a really nice one. So again, just a phenomenal car, and I think, again, one of the most beautiful cars ever made, especially from that time era of the late 60s. Right, guys. Number 5 for me is the 1969 Dodge Charger. Again, the General Lee, right? I grew up in that generation of kids where the Dukes of Hazzard was everything to me. I have always wanted one of these cars. These cars new were, $3,500. You could get multiple different engine options. The 383, the 440, the 426 Hemi, with all different, carburation options. Different, you could do a manual or an automatic. These cars were iconic. They were beautiful. And again, if you were a kid of my generation, you always wanted a General Lee. Obviously, times have changed with the Confederate flag, and there's a lot of controversy. One of the saddest things to me is, understanding, watching the show and how that show there was no racial overtones. It was really a celebration of Southern culture at the time, which at the time was very common. You'd see all the bands from the time, you'd see Leonard Skinner and all these guys, and the Confederate flag became a symbol of Southern culture versus kind of the symbol of racism that it was previously. And look, it is a symbol of racism. We all understand that. But I think if over time it had been, co-opted into this different thing, and there's a lot of controversy around, obviously, the Dukes of Hazzard and the General Lee today and the Confederate flag, and I get it. What kills me is now that I'm old enough and I can afford one, I actually found a place in Chicago that sells these, and they were, reasonably priced, in that $40,000 range, where I could have picked up a 383 with an automatic and the tan interior for, around $40,000. I would never dream of owning one today. So, but I would say, just holistically, outside of the General Lee, this car is absolutely gorgeous. That Coke bottle style, the front end of that 1 year, with that specific grille, I think it looks really great. The 68 looks great too, but that 69, where they split the grille down the middle, I just think looks so good, and that really swooping body style, just a beautiful car. I mean, again, if you want one today, you're going to spend every bit of $50,000 to find a nice RT. With the controversy around the General Lee things, you might be able to find a General Lee for around $40,000. But again, you got to decide, is it worth buying that car and taking a chance of someone wrecking it anytime you go out, especially if you're going to park it somewhere. Maybe you're taking it to a car show or a car and coffee. It'll be a little different. I've seen a couple this year at some shows, and the people are just kind of looking at it, and really it's the nostalgia bug that comes up, and we all look at the car and we love it. But I would tell you, like taking it to a restaurant, I truly believe you're taking a risk of someone keying that car or damaging. So again, the choice is yours, but holistically, what a beautiful car. You know the history of them getting just destroyed in California by the production crews building, buying all the ones they could and wrecking them. They wrecked like over 100, I believe, during the filming of the Dukes of Hazzard. So, but what a beautiful, cool car. All right, everybody. Number 4, one of the most iconic cars ever made, the 1965 and 66 Shelby GT350. fastback. And this is specifically for the fastback. I know they made like 4 prototype convertibles, but that body style of the fastback, I love the 65, 66 Mustang fastback as it is, but this car was a different level, right? You had the, Shelby kind of worked on it, that 289 with, the high performance 289, a little over 300 horsepower. It's huge money in 65, 66 for a Mustang, like $4,500, so like $2,000 more than a regular Mustang. We're talking Corvette money. But man, these cars were awesome. And you could get, like in 66, you could get a Paxton supercharger from the factory and have over 400 horsepower. It was $1,000 option on a $4,000 car, right? So you start to think about like how cool and how crazy these cars were. And everyone knows the story of Carroll Shelby. I'm not going to go deep into it, but these cars were actually made by Shelby the first 2 years. After that, they actually were made by Ford. So these went to Shelby's factory and they were retrofitted there. But man, just both beautiful cars. Again, if I had to think about which one I'd want, it's tough. It'd either be a 65 in the white and blue or a 66, GT350H, the Hertz with the black and gold, the Renner Racer cars, which are absolutely gorgeous. If you haven't seen it yet, check out Hoovie's channel. He just picked up a Renner Racer that is a race car for Class B racing, so that's a really cool video. Check that out on YouTube. But I would tell you, just beautiful, iconic cars. And here's the crazy thing. I mean, these cars are going for anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 now. I remember just 10 years ago, you could pick one up, for 90 or 100. Now, they're literally double and triple that. But they are absolutely gorgeous. That 65 and 66 Mustang fastback styling is just iconic. And, think about that car, that first 2 years of Mustang, they sold 1 million cars. It's incomprehensible today to think about selling 1 million cars of a sports car in 2 years, but Ford did, because they just hit such a hot button with the public at the time, especially the young public, in making the car available in a straight 6 for not a ton of money, all the way through, the high horsepower, high output V8 at the time, and what a beautiful, iconic car. So number 3 for me is going to be the 1959 and 1960 Impala SS, or even just the Impala in general. The Impalas were, really cool cars, came out in 58. Again, a sister car to the Biscayne. It was the Bel Air, right? It was all these different cars that were, different trim levels essentially, and they looked slightly different. The higher the trim level, the more taillights you get in the back, it looked a little different. But the Impala was kind of the top dog, and it was beautiful. The interior was stunning. The exterior was beautiful. And in 59 and 60, they had kind of taken the fins. And it went in 59 they bent like this, and in 60 they kind of almost bent all the way over in the back. And I love that style. I think taking that fin and taking it and keeping it going, but bending it over to more of a horizontal from a vertical fin just gives that car such cool style, right? It's just a beautiful looking car. You had a bunch of different engine options. You had the base V6, you had a 283 V8, you had a 348, which is the high horsepower V8. But the car just altogether just looks great. And, it's one of those cars that you see, and, you got to see it in white or that light blue that was out at the time with the blue interior, and it just pops. When I see one of those cars, I get super excited because, again, the chrome in the front, the styling in the back, that was kind of the evolution you were heading into in the 60s from those really rounded cars of the 50s. It just looks so cool, and it's just a really pretty car. These cars new were, $3,000. Now if you want a nice one, you're at 50 or 60 grand. So, again, not super affordable, but still one of the more affordable cars on this list. And if you can find it, a 348 59, or I'm sorry, 348 60 with the latest body style, I think you're getting yourself a hell of a beautiful car. So one of my favorites. Let's talk about number 2 on my list, and it came very close to being number 1. The 1968 to 72 Chevy Corvette. That Stingray body style. With the chrome bumpers, a little smaller, not the huge fenders you get with the later 80 and 82s, but what a beautiful car. I mean, I think everything about this car is absolutely phenomenal, and it's crazy because people love the 60, 66, 67s. The chassis and the motors were all carried over. What they switched in 68 was the body style, and then really the interior was actually kind of similar too. And then 69, they changed the interior, right? And if you read the articles from back in the day, it was a better riding car. It was faster, it handled better, like everything about the car was better, but it didn't get the same amount of love. And that maybe started with the 68s having a few issues right out of the box. They had some overheating issues, they had some electrical issues, so there was some gremlins in year 1 that maybe made that car seem less desirable. But I will tell you, anytime I see a steel bumper 68 through 72 Corvette. I got to go take a look at it. And that car was so cool. It was like $4,500 new back then. You had a ton of different engine options from the 327 through the 427. Different horsepower ratings. Special versions. I mean, there's just so many cool versions of this car. But what I love about it is the style is truly timeless. I mean, the pop-up headlights, that first, real iteration of the pop-up headlights in the Corvette that would stay on through the C4s, actually through the C5s, right? So it would stay through the C5, that beautiful interior, the removable roof, that Mako Shark from the concept car in '65. Now these cars are interesting, right? So these cars really range in price from anywhere from 30 to over 100,000, depending on what you're getting for options and features. If you're trying to find like a 427 convertible, you're going to spend a whole bunch of money. But if you get a 327 or a 350 with an automatic, kind of a base model, you can get a reasonably good price on one of these still. And I just think they look so good in that body style. Tons of great colors. I think that British Racing green color, and I don't know what Chevy called it, but that's kind of what it looks like to me when I see it. Maybe it's a Highland green. I know that was a Ford color, but I just think it looks so pretty in those different colors, especially those darker hues. And or if you see like a copper or bronze color on it, also looks really, really nice. So second favorite car from a style standpoint for American cars, and now on to what I think truly is the greatest looking American car ever made. All right, guys, let's talk about, in my opinion, the best looking American car ever made. And I still think when I go to a Cars and Coffee or a car show, and I've seen a few of them this year, it is still the best looking American car I have ever seen. And I would even go as to say it might be the best looking car I've ever seen. It really is a rival to anything that the Germans or the Italians have done. And that's going to be the 2005-2006 Ford GT. What a special car this was, right? This was Ford coming out to, celebrate their wins in Le Mans. With the GT40, which again is a beautiful car too. But the proportions on the GT, to me, just work a little better than the GT40. And I know it's going to be sacrilege to a ton of you guys that are going to say, the GT40 is so much better. Please, don't beat me up. It's just my personal opinion. But I think the body style of that car, the wheels, all the technology, I mean, again, it was $150,000 plus new. There was tons of dealer markup. But you got this beautiful 5.4 liter supercharged V8, mid-engine, 550 horsepower, manual transmission, minimal driving aids, a cool interior with toggle switches and ventilated seats, but these giant rivets in the middle or holes in the middle of the seats to let cool air in. And it was a race car for the road that absolutely looked phenomenal. I think it was just such a stunning and beautiful car. Now, the other cool thing on this car would be, when you look at it, it was a, road-going version of the old car. It had a ton of power. It sold well. They made tons of great colors in it. You could do the, red, black, blue, white. There was a Heritage Edition, which called back to the Gulf colors, which is that, that Gulf blue and orange, which again, if I ever hit the lottery, I will buy a Heritage Edition 05 or 06 Ford GT. It would be my dream car that would sit in my garage that I would just go in and look at and drool over and drive sporadically in the summertime because it is just such a beautiful, iconic car. That's the list today. Thank you for checking us out. We appreciate you guys for checking out the channel. We hope you had some fun with this one. What I would say is we're going to do some more lists. We'll probably do some of the greatest 80s American cars, the greatest 60s muscle cars. We're going to have some fun with this. So look for a new list every probably 2 or 3 weeks. We'll put on the channel through the winter season. And if you have a list you'd like me to do around some different cars, please throw it in the comment section down below. We'd love to go through and share some of that with you. That being said, we hope you have an awesome day. Thank you for checking out the channel. Please hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't so far. We appreciate you guys for doing it. We'll talk to everybody soon.